What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So for today's movie review, we are taking a look at the horror film Last Straw. Now this is considered a horror thriller. That's the only subgenre it's been given as far as a horror film. It's also a thriller. So this film came out in 2023 and it stars, as you see on the screen here, Jessica Belkin. Now, I will say though, when you watch the film, you will realize it does kind of fall within the home invasion subgenre of horror. Even though it doesn't take place in a home, it actually takes place in a diner, like an old school diner kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So while again, it doesn't happen in a home, it still has the same premise, the same kind of setup and result as a home invasion film would. Again, it's part of that subgenre for horror. Now, just a bit of background on this film before we get into the details. Again, it did come out in 2023. It did have a very small theatrical run. As far as from what I can see, it was originally released. It has 2023, and I said before, I usually go by the date of when it's first starting being shown to the public as far as any festival dates. So that was the original date that was listed for it. Now, the only box office or release date I could find as far as theatrical releases was one location in New York and then in Hungary. So I'm not sure what the rationale was as far as those releases, but gross worldwide box office was only a little below $89,000. So it didn't make that much, and even the runtime is a little bit shorter than your typical standard horror film. Like, we know standard horror films, are usually an hour and 30 minutes, the 90-minute, tagline. This one was about just a little over an hour and 20 minutes, so about almost 10 minutes shorter than the average film. I think that's fine. For this film, I don't think it needed that additional, 7 to 10 minutes. Had it had that additional time, I'm not really sure where it would have put it as the story progressed. I think there were even some places you could have shortened it up a little bit and made the film a little bit shorter, maybe by another 10 minutes. But it doesn't hurt the film. Shorting it by another 10 minutes, in my opinion, whether you do or don't do that, doesn't hurt the film. Had you added that additional 10 minutes, I think that might have stretched it a little bit, and you would have wondered, okay, there are some aspects of the story that just aren't needed. So we're gonna jump right into the details now. So FYI, spoilers, if you have not seen this one is currently streaming on Shudder. So if you have Shudder, you haven't seen this film, you can go over there and check it out. It is streaming there. To my knowledge, it is not streaming anywhere else. I'm sure you could possibly rent it on Amazon Prime, but I haven't confirmed that. You'd have to check that out for yourself. But again, if you have Shudder, you can stream it there. So as I mentioned, we are going to discuss spoilers now. So if you have not seen the film and you want to see the film, pause the video or come back to this video after you've watched it. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let us know what you think after you've watched the video. Do you agree with our review, our score of the film? If not, let us know. Why did you either rate it higher or lower? And if you haven't seen the film, still drop a comment in the comment section before you go and let us know if you're going to be checking it out. But from this point forward, spoilers. So Last Straw. So this film, like I said, it kind of falls within that home invasion subgenre of horror. But again, it doesn't happen at a home. This takes place at a diner. I'd say about 90% of the film happens at this diner. So we follow our main character. We're following is Nancy Osborne. So the film starts off with, we're following her. She's on her way to work. She ends up stopping off and spending some time with a friend, taking part in some recreational items before going to work. And also realizing that she is pregnant. She takes a pregnancy test before heading to work, realizing she is pregnant. Obviously, you can tell by her reaction during this test, it was an unexpected, unplanned, and based on her reaction, unwanted pregnancy. Now she's just not sure how she's going to deal with it. She tells her friend about this. So her and her best friend, or her friend, part ways. She's on her way to work. Car breaks down, so it's like another hit, right? She just found out she's pregnant, not wanting to deal with that. Her car breaks down. Now she's having to walk to work, not wanting to deal with that. So it's setting up her character to already be like, I'm having a bad day or I'm having a rough time, right? So she's on her way to work, and soon as she's walking, a coworker by the name of Bobby, who will play a pivotal role in this film. He is a supporting character, but still plays a pivotal role. So Bobby comes across on his bike. Hey, I'll give you a ride. So she gets on the bike. They head to work, to the diner. Now her father owns the diner. Her father, Edward Osborne, is the owner. It seems like this diner has been in the family for quite some time, just based on the discussions. Now, Nancy is a recently promoted manager, and that has set some of the other employees kind of, I don't want to say on edge, but they are not happy about the fact that she's a manager and none of them are, especially the character Jake. So Jake is the head chef, or is the chef, cook, whatever you want to call them, for this diner. He is the one that runs the kitchen. We also have a couple of other characters one named Coop. He's another employee there, and another one by the name of Petey. So Petey also plays a semi-important role in this whole thing as it plays out as well. So as this goes on, she shows up to work, again, not really enjoying the fact that now she's the manager, but she also finds out from her dad she has to work the late shift with Jake, who she just despises. She does not like being around Jake. She doesn't like Jake at all, but now she's having to work the late shift. The late shift meaning like the overnight shift. So as the story goes on, we have some four individuals, I don't want to call them teenagers, probably teenagers, probably 18, 19 years old, showing up on their mopeds, giving her and the others a hard time. They're outside. She goes out there to try to tell them, hey, get out of here, you're not wanted, you're causing a ruckus. So, and their response to her is to throw a dead opossum at her, which doesn't bode well with her. So she just so some back and forth. She walks off inside, has a bit of a attitude with Bobby, because Bobby's wanting to help, wanting to insert himself. I think you see immediately he has a crush on her, but she's not having it. She's not wanting to hear it. So pushes him away, and then she goes into the back because previously Petey had spilled some water on the floor. She slips into it. She goes back there, yells at Petey to get out there and clean it up. Now, Petey is the brother of Jake in this film. Now, you will recognize very quickly Petey does have, I don't want to say a learning disability. He does have, he was born differently than the rest. So you will notice that right away. And so she's very hard on him. And you can tell Jake's there. He's like, hey, he's sticking up for his brother, taking care of his brother. And he's like, hey, you don't need to talk to him that way. So he feels that he needs to go there and explain things to him as to why he's getting yelled at. So as she's on her way back out, these four individuals that she thought had left on their mopeds show back up. They're now in the diner, not wanting to cooperate. She threatens to call the police. She goes over as if she's going to call the police, but doesn't really call them to get them to think that they're on their way. They fall for it. They end up walking out. And then after that little bit of back and forth, she goes to the restroom to kind of calm herself down. Bobby is outside the door. She sees him through the mirror, thinking he's spying on her, but he's really just there to make sure that she's okay. This just sets her off even more, and then tells everyone to get to the kitchen, pretty much having like a staff meeting almost, it seems like. Jake does, she goes on to say, I'm the manager, you guys need to listen to me. And Jake pushes back a bit and says, the only reason you're the manager is because your dad owns the place. Again, that doesn't sit well with her. Ends up firing Jake. That doesn't sit well with him. He ends up leaving. And then as the shift goes on, we do a little bit of a jump. Now, let me just pause for a moment. When this film first starts, we start off on let's say like on Tuesday, for example. And then when the movie actually picks up and we start following the characters, we move back 24 hours to Monday. So I want to make that clear. That you're going to see something at the beginning of the film. as it's the result of what's happened during this 24 hours. So I just want to make sure I mention that. So she fires everybody, or fires Jake. The shift goes on. Everybody is leaving the diner because she's left on her own now. She fired Jake, who was supposed to work the late shift with her, but now she's apparently going to do it by herself. And everyone gives her the cold shoulder, even Bobby. They don't talk to her. They don't say nothing. So they end up leaving. So she's there by herself. And as the night goes on, she just starts to, just as you would by yourself in a diner with no customers. So she starts to turn music up, starts dancing, doing all this stuff. Ultimately ends up, I don't know if it's the pregnancy or, something got her worked up to where she got sick in the middle of the diner. So as she's cleaning up the diner, these 4 individuals have returned. They had masks on earlier. They were wearing the same mask still. So they start to scare her, to start to bother her. They're pounding on things. She sees the mopeds outside, so she knows and believes it's them. She does, in fact, this time call the police, call the sheriff's department, who do show up, and they were actually off working another scene. Now, the sheriff mentions this to her as the fact that when he realizes and gets a call back from dispatch and realizes and he sees that there's mopeds at the diner, he tries to get her out of there and rushes her out to say, hey, I just left one of the most horrific scenes I ever, and we have evidence that there were mopeds there. So next thing you know, someone comes up from behind him and hits him over the head, and she takes off running back inside. So now you have these 4 individuals who are terrorizing her, trying to get to her. Ultimately, they do get inside the diner. She manages to get like a kitchen knife and stab one of them in like the lower leg calf area. And while she's outside, and she manages to get outside into an outer building, like a shed. And when she's out there, she sees then Bobby show up with his bike, and he comes across the sheriff who's knocked out. So she runs out there to get Bobby and get back inside the diner. They do. Now the killers, or the 4 kids on the mopeds, are still in the diner. They manage to get Bobby's cell phone. They're trying to call for help, and they just can't get through by the time that they make too much noise and get caught. So they both get caught. Both are tied up or duct taped. They take her into the back area, like the kitchen area. She manages to get free and is running outside. And when she gets outside, there's one of the individuals out there who she stabs in the stomach. Now, once she does that, this individual takes off his mask. And this is where the story now takes a huge twist. It's Petey, one of the employees. And then it shocks her. She steps away, and the next thing you know, both Bobby and Coop, one of the other employees, come out and see this happening. And then she realizes, wait a minute, Bobby was in on this. And then the other masked individual, who doesn't take off his mask right away there, but we know it's him. It is in fact Jake. So these are the 4 employees from earlier in the movie. Now what ends up happening here is we end up getting this. They end up trying to save Petey by taking him inside, but they aren't able to, save him. And Koopa's supposed to watch her. She ends up escaping again. But they manage to capture her. They get her back inside. Ultimately, what ends up happening is that Bobby ends up getting killed because Bobby, changes his mind, tries to save her and take Jake out. That doesn't work. Jake ends up killing Bobby, and Jake ends up stabbing Nancy, and he thinks he's killed her. He thinks that she is dead when he leaves. And again, now this is now where we see a shift in the story, where the movie shifts now, and we go right back to almost the beginning of the film where Jake was fired. And now we're going to watch the movie now from his perspective, from the killer's perspective. And we will now see everything I pretty much explained, but again, from Jake's perspective. And we eventually see how Jake and Petey come across the mopeds. They ran into the 4 original individuals that were terrorizing the diner earlier. They ran into them, ended up retiring all of them, stealing the moped, stealing the mask. So they are now portraying the individuals that were in the beginning of the movie. So Nancy thinks it's the same 4 individuals until she realizes it's not when she stabs Petey. So again, now the last, I'd say half of the film, we're watching everything I pretty much walked through, but we're watching it from Jake's perspective, as well as Bobby and Petey's. Now, ultimately, what happens is Bobby does see Nancy like in this shed, so he sees her, but he has the mask on, so she doesn't realize it's him. So what he does is to try to make it seem like he's not involved. He goes back around the building, takes off the mask, and grabs his bike, and then starts walking out in the open as if he just got there. Again, not to draw Nancy out, but to make it seem like, hey, this has gone too far. I don't want to be a part of this, and I don't want her thinking I'm a part of this. But ultimately, she realizes he is. So by the time we run back through the story again, all the way up to where Jake stabs Nancy and thinks she's dead, we follow Jake back to his house where he's now trying to pack up all his stuff, trying to get out of there. But ultimately, we go back now to Nancy laying down in the diner. And this is where it gets kind of very unrealistic. So she starts breathing again, which based on the stab wounds that we saw her take, she wouldn't have been. She pulls this knife, like kind of like the one she has in her hand that you see here in the picture, out of her midsection. And then we see her sit up, and next thing you know, we see her pulling out all these like various thicknesses of like steaks and beef cuts, where she had that almost like a vest, like a bulletproof vest almost, to take all the stab wounds. I mean, he stabbed her in more places than that, so the blood loss she still would have been significant. But she manages to survive long enough to then grab the keys from Bobby, who was trying to hand her the keys previously while he was dying, to the sheriff's car. She gets in the sheriff's car. She knows where Jake lives, so she ends up at his house, puts a diner sticker on his doorbell to keep it ringing. He comes out and sees it, doesn't realize what it is at first, then it clicks onto him what it is, and then Nancy comes up from behind him, injures him severely in the neck, and then finishes him off right there on his front porch. She ends up leaving, walking back down the street where she collapses, but her dad ends up finding her, because the police were previously called by Jake to kind of like get the police off the trail of him and onto somebody else. Her dad's up finding her on the side of the road, still barely breathing. And then this is where she kind of almost in a way tells them that she's pregnant, and then the movie just ends. So I think that last bit, I mean, if she just would have not, I mean, if we would have saw her dad like coming up, like driving up and then running off from the distance as he's blurred up to her, and like, you know, finding her and saying help's on the way, the movie just kind of would have ended there with her looking up in the sky. That would have been fine. But the last little bit of dialogue just seemed very out of place, didn't make sense. So yeah, so overall, this was a very interesting movie. I liked the fact that we saw the kind of the first half of the film setting the stage, setting the tone, and then we got to a point where then it kind of stopped, almost started over, and then we saw everything from the killer's perspective, but pretty much, again, everything but from different vantage point and viewpoints. Overall, I give this film, for me, I give it a solid 4. I really enjoyed it. I like that aspect. You don't see that type of storytelling from both perspectives too often in horror films, so I did like that change. It wasn't just a straight up, like I said, home invasion type subgenre film where you just had to survive. It wasn't a diner. We saw both perspectives. So solid 4 out of 5 for me. Would I rewatch this again in the future? Absolutely. For me, it has a little bit of rewatch value. Highly recommend it. But yeah, that's Last Straw that you can find over on Shudder. So that's going to be our review. So drop a comment in the comment section. Let us know what you think. If you've seen the film, do you agree with a 4 out of 5? And if you haven't seen the film, I would recommend this one. I'd highly recommend you check it out if you have Shudder. I would recommend you watch any film that we review here, whether it's good or bad, because you may like it and, you know, I may not like it, and vice versa. But I thought this one was pretty good for the, like I said, for the hour and 23 minutes it presented. I thought it was a pretty good film overall. So 4 out of 5. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let us know what you think. Otherwise, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and we will see you at the next one. Peace.